I have never seen a bigger group of hypocrites than the SEC. Hey, welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm host JR, presented and brought to you by FanDuel. We appreciate you being here as we have a lot to discuss. It is the weekend episode, weekend show, whatever you want to call it. And at this point, we should just call it the snow show, not the no show, the snow show, because here where I'm at, right outside of Bloomington, Indiana, it is insane outside right now. Tons of snow, can't even get out. We were just out at a cafe and stuff like that this morning because we were trying to get out as much as possible once the snow hit around 2-3 o'clock here. We're going to be inside for a little bit. So if you're going to be inside as well, hit that like, that subscribe button here with me on the channel. Got a new thing we're doing here. All right. So I have told you guys about how we want more likes and subscribes here for a while. Well, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. All right. If you like, subscribe, and comment on any of the videos in the month of January. Like, subscribe, and comment to any of the videos. Do all three, though. Do all three to any of the videos in the month of January. At the end of January, I will pull one person, one commenter off of a video. I'll make sure that person is subscribed, make sure that person has liked the video too, but I'll do all of that and make sure, and I will reply to your comment and let you know you've won, and you can choose one piece of apparel off of Home Field to for me to buy for you. Now it has to be $100 or less. I'm not buying the bomber jackets that are like $250 or anything like that. But if you comment, I will pick one person at the end of the month. This is probably the best month to do it because we only got like a week left here for the month. So comment, like, subscribe, do all that stuff, and I will pick somebody here at the end of the month. All right, let's get into this episode because we have the SEC being full of hypocrites. Why the Big Ten wants I put the 12-team playoff there. I meant the 24-team playoff. Whoops. I fixed it. Pausing on StreamYard is a beautiful thing. And then at the end, going to get to how Ohio State found their new offensive coordinator and Arthur Smith. Talk through that. I have 5 reasons why I think it's an excellent hire for Ohio State, and I think it's going to serve them really, really well. So like I said, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Enter yourself in for a chance to win some free home field apparel, or you win this hat or my Big Ten hat or whatever, any apparel off of the Big Ten Huddle merch shop as well. All right, we got a lot to get to. Let's go ahead and get into this. Greg Sankey said that he is mystified why there's a lack of clarity over the responsibility of tampering in college football today. And all I have to say in response to Greg Sankey is, yeah, me too, Greg. Me too. Because right now, the SEC is publicly decrying about tampering and rule breaking in college football, as highlighted by Ross Dellinger in his article about a week ago. But their own teams like Ole Miss, LSU, Alabama engage in blatant tampering and exemplify the problem of poaching in college football today. Now, most recently, Dabo Swinney has pointed this out. There are rumors out there that have been actually confirmed at this point, so not just rumors, but news out there of Lane Kiffin FaceTiming Ole Miss players to try and get them to jump in the portal and come join him at LSU. And in fact, it was out the last offseason or 2 off seasons ago, Chuck Martin from Miami of Ohio actually came out and publicly called out Alabama for stealing their kicker. So naturally, you would think, well, why would the conference that is doing the most blatant tampering right now be the conference that is complaining about it the most? It's quite simple. Because the SEC is full of hypocrites. Their commissioner is a hypocrite, their coaches are hypocrites, and their athletic directors are. The reason you won't hear this is because many in the media are bound to the SEC and access to the SEC. I myself, I am a Big Ten guy. I have no requirement to have access to the SEC, so therefore, I don't care if the SEC wants to say, no, you can't come to SEC media days. You can't come to this. You can't come to that. All I care about is being able to tell you the truth of what's going on. And the truth is that the SEC wants to put up a front that they, are going to disband from the NCAA and all this stuff, which they actually might do. I've talked about that before, but they just want to put up this front of everybody else is cheating. Everybody else is tampering. Everybody else has money. We have none. Meanwhile, they don't want to address how they have been called out for tampering multiple times, and they don't want to address the cheating that they did for years, paying players. And now you can't pay Cam Newton $180,000 anymore to come to your school. It's going to cost $3, $6, $5, sometimes even $6 million, not thousand. Dollars to come to your school, but the SEC does not want to pay that. So the SEC instead goes out here, talks about tampering and how it's a big problem and all this stuff, when all the while they are the ones doing it. Now, Ross Dellinger's article did not just feature people from the SEC. All right, I want to make that clear. He had sources from all other places too, and it was a lot of different people talking about tampering. But one of the groups that was talking about the most, and the group that said that they were thinking about only playing conference games, was in fact the SEC. I will link that article down below. You can go read it yourself. But coaches are encouraging players to enter the portal despite having contracts or being in classes at other places. Now, Miami is really the one that is most well known for this. And of course, Miami is not in the SEC, but Miami, along with Alabama, LSU, and Ole Miss, are some of the primary schools that are the biggest issue of this. And also the SEC wants to talk about how nobody is following the House settlement $20.5 million cap, when in reality, none of their teams are following it either. At least teams like Ohio State are coming out and saying the cap is too small. We just need an unlimited cap? Because right now, nobody is following that actual cap and what it is. Instead, you get the SEC saying, well, nobody's following it and we're just trying to do our best. Bull crap. They're not. They're just trying to put up a front to make it seem like they are. Now, I will give some credit here to the Texas AD, Chris Del Conte. And honestly, if there's an SEC team that I actually have like somewhat respect for at this point, it's Texas, because Texas is the team that's going into the SEC. They're winning right away, and they're not falling for all the SEC BS, right? They are out here talking and actually making some sense. Chris Del Conte in the article said, quote, "We made the rules." He's talking about the NCAA. "And yet members broke the rules and lawyered up to sue over the rules they created." Now, he is not talking about himself there, but he is talking about how the NCAA is actually run by the schools. And if you follow Bud Elliott over at the Cover 3 podcast, he's talked about this quite a bit, to where a lot of these schools are complaining and saying, well, nobody's enforcing these things. And it's in reality, the NCAA is a collection of the schools. And so they are the ones that are really not enforcing it, because like I said, everyone tampers. There is no school out there that doesn't tamper. The only thing that some schools do and don't do is some schools do it really well, like Miami, and some schools really stink at it, like Clemson, right? This is how the world of college football works today. And if anybody wants to come out here and try to cry, oh, well, we don't tamper, everybody else is tampering, they're just hypocrites, because everybody does it. If you listen to Dabo Swinney with his whole tampering story and everything going on, you will quickly learn that Ole Miss was caught red-handed tampering. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire story with you or anything like that, but I would encourage you to go listen to Dabo Swinney talk about it, because it is very eye-opening and it does give you a glimpse into how tampering works. Now, the agent, Ryan Williams, of the Clemson, former Clemson player Luke Ferrell, was the one that got all this started. He informed Clemson's general manager, Jordan Sorrell, that Pete Golding was aggressively pursuing Luke, and that, they didn't need to worry because Luke wasn't going anywhere. In reality, all that agent wanted to do was to try and get Clemson to up their offer, so that way he can make more money. It's more lucrative for him. They get a large amount, about 15-20% typically, which is much more than they should be getting and much more than what they get in the NFL. Thank you, NCAA, for not putting any agent requirements out there or how much agents can make. That's great too. You can't tell my sarcasm here. But Clemson basically told the Ole Miss GM, hey, tell Pete Golding to cut it out. And the Ole Miss GM said, well, he's my boss. I'm not going to tell him what to do. He just does whatever. I'm obviously summarizing quite a bit here. Please go listen to Dabo Swinney if you want the entire story. But basically told him, I don't know what you want me to do. He's my boss. Pete Golding, in fact, also got guys like Trinidad Chambliss, former quarterback Jackson Dart, to go and speak to Luke or contact Luke, not speak to him face to face, but contact Luke about going to Ole Miss. This whole situation is complete buffoonery. This whole situation is utter tampering and being caught red-handed for it. But of course, Ole Miss is a part of the SEC where they want to complain about tampering and everything else. Eventually, this story ended with Pete Golding sending pictures of the contract, of the $2 million contract, 2 years, $2 million to him to come and play at their school. It's an incredibly crazy situation. It's an incredible amount of tampering and everything else. And as much as, I know Dabo is not everybody's favorite coach out there and stuff, and not everybody loves Dabo. I get that. But you don't have to love Dabo to understand the impact of tampering here and just how hypocritical it is for the SEC to come out and talk about how everybody else is tampering and how terrible of a thing it is, when in reality, they're the ones out here doing it just like everybody else. And honestly, they're probably doing it better than many other people are. So Ross Dellinger's article clearly states that the SEC is upset with this. The SEC wants to get away from it, but in reality, they're not going to, because they're tampering just like anybody else. And if they are going to get away from it, they're going to continue to tamper with other teams and try to create themselves into a bigger league and do all that stuff. So it's a crazy situation. It's a sad situation that we're in right now in college football, because there is no leadership, there is no guidance, and there's nobody leading the way. And if we try to give that to the SEC, it's going to go terribly. And to show my, to not show my bias, if we give it to the Big Ten, it's going to go terribly, because conferences should not be running college football. It should be a collection of the schools. The problem is that the schools are not honoring their portion of it right now, because some schools want to do this, some schools want to do that, and then at the end of the day, nobody is actually following any rules, because we're not actually putting it together, and the NCAA can hardly ever win in court. So let me know your thoughts on the entire situation. It's pretty crazy. Even if you just want to, comment down below entered or something like that, to be entered into the contest to win one piece of apparel from Home Field or one of these hats from the Big Ten Huddle merch site, please do so. Like I said, comment, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and we'll get to it. But just know the SEC, as much as it's full of cheaters from years ago when they were paying players, it's also full of hypocrites and people that are just not being honest at all either. So we'll be right back to talk through the Big Ten and their quest for 24 teams in the playoffs. The college football playoffs is staying at 12 teams, but that's not what the Big Ten wanted. And I think it's important to reference here what the Big Ten did want with the 2014 playoffs. Now, do not misconstrue this. This is not me telling you that the 2014 playoff is the best option out there, and that's exactly what it should be or anything. We all have different things that we want. One of the reasons why I was a proponent of the 2014 playoff is because I did want to see one team from every single conference make it into the playoff, and I did want to see automatic bids for multiple of the Power Four conferences. If we were to get into a situation where we had that, we would have had one representative from each conference, and then we would have had four Power Four conference champions with three more additional to that. So 4 automatic bids for each Power Four conference, 1 automatic bid for all of the Power Six or the Group of 6 conferences out there. That would have equaled to 22 and given you 2 at-large bids. That would have limited the committee and what they do in the at-large bids and stuff like that, which I was completely in favor of, because I don't think the committee does the best job, as most people don't think they do by the end of the year either. But that is obviously off the table now, because the SEC was vying for the 16-team playoff. And I think, once you understand why the Big Ten wanted the 24-team playoff, and why they still do, this isn't going away. They still want this. You begin to understand more about why the SEC wanted the 16-team playoff. And again, I'm not trying to sway anybody here and say that this is what you should want, this is what you should not want. I'm just trying to present the argument on both sides so that way people understand. I think a lot of people see the 2014 playoff and immediately think that's too many teams. This is terrible. We hate this. And I get that because that's not college football tradition. College football tradition is a small group in the postseason with many other bowls and everything else. But if you understand where college football is nowadays, it's that the bowls don't matter nearly as much as they once did. I love the bowls. I think the bowls are great. I enjoy watching the bowls, but we also are seeing bowl games where we are not seeing as many players as we once did from those schools. We're seeing opt-outs. We're seeing transfer portal guys, everything else. And it does make the bowls different. I'm not saying it makes it worse than it was before, but it does make the bowls different because we're not seeing the final form of these teams play teams from other conferences. And so the 2014 playoff would allow for, well, we'll just start with this as reason number one. This was actually reason number three, but we'll start with this as reason number one. Reason number one is that it would allow more teams to play their final game of the season with more players from their actual team and making a meaningful game. All right. As much as, yes, the bowl games are meaningful to me, and I'm sure they are meaningful to you as well, because we like to watch them. Nobody wants to see the bowl games go away. They're not as meaningful to the players. You have opt-outs, you have players going into the transfer portal and everything else. If you were to expand the playoffs to 24 rather than the 12, that would give you 12 more teams playing a postseason game that would be meaningful to them, and their players would likely not opt out of. I think a lot of people just assume, well, you're going to have opt-outs if this happens, and they're not going to play in the playoffs. And we've just not seen that yet. I understand making that assumption, but we've just not seen that yet. And so the idea of more teams playing meaningful games that more teams would be involved in, and more of these players not opting out and continuing to play hard for their team, would give people more valuable football to watch rather than some of these bowl games where you have opt-outs of, anywhere from, 1 to sometimes even 12, 15, 30 sometimes players because of coaching changes in the transfer portal, not just declaring for the draft and stuff like that anymore. Reason number two is that the expansion of the playoffs would allow for an expansion of conferences. Would allow for the expansion of conferences. I said that incorrectly. Let me state that again. Expansion of the playoffs allows expansion for the conference. That's what the Big Ten wants. The Big Ten wants to continue to expand, whether you want them to or not. Again, I'm not advocating for this. I'm just telling you this is why the Big Ten wants it. The Big Ten wants to continue to expand and grow and become a larger league. In August of 2025, Jim Smith, the Maryland athletic director, stated that the Big Ten is eyeing a 20-team conference by 2030. This goes in line with everything we've said on this channel, which is that around 2029, 2030, the ACC buyout for a lot of these teams in the ACC will be low enough that you'll start to see these teams pay the buyout, and you'll also start to see the conference help pay for the buyout as well. You're talking about teams like Virginia, North Carolina, Clemson, Miami, Florida State, teams like that would be apt to leave the ACC and go to the Big 12, Big 10, the SEC, maybe even the Big 12 as well. But to go to those conferences, because those conferences have a more lucrative deal or a deal that is sooner ending to possibly be more lucrative than what the ACC has right now. But with them being tied into their grant of rights, they're not going to be earning as much. But now we just got word later last week that CFP expansion, with that being off the table, this was not said to be directly related, but we think it is related because right after that happened, the Purdue athletic director said, quote, "I don't see it expanding." He's talking about the conference, unless the environment really becomes fractured where the structure doesn't hold and we feel like we need to do our own thing, end quote. Now, if you understand what he's talking about there, is he's talking about a situation to where a super league or something like that, or two leagues getting together like the SEC and the Big Ten, which we have talked about on this channel multiple times before. Eventually, college football is going to get to a place where it is just the SEC and just the Big Ten. That does not look like it's going to be very likely right now. because of how much the SEC and the Big Ten do not get along and how they can't agree on things together. But there's a reason why you continue to see the SEC talking about breaking away from the NCAA, and there's a reason why you continue to see the Big Ten do their own thing and not be as connected as other conferences are to each other, like this situation with the 2014 playoff. It's because the Big Ten and the SEC truly do want to continue to expand, but the SEC right now would not see a continued increase in their TV revenue with expansion. The Big Ten, their TV deal ends around 2030, 2031. It's one of those 2 years. I can't remember off the top of my head. And if the Big Ten adds more teams, that would allow them to add more to their TV deal, which would, in turn to that, they would also add more teams who would be able to get into the playoff more. Why they would want 24 teams. But with that off the table, that not happening, now you're starting to hear athletic directors say, "Yeah, I don't think we're going to expand. Unless something else happens, I don't think we're going to expand." Finally, point number 3, and this is a big one. And honestly, this is a one that I'm not saying everybody should agree with, but I do think everybody outside of the SEC should agree with, because there is a lot of disdain for ESPN and how much of a stranglehold they have on the college football playoffs right now. Reason number 3, adding a new round of the playoffs would give NBC, Fox, and CBS the opportunity to pay for access to those games. Right now, ESPN has exclusive access to the entire playoffs and all the rounds. If you were to add 4 teams and put it in the 16-team playoff, you would not add another round. You might have some play-in games and stuff like that, but you would still have the same number of rounds, and that would make things different. It would make things different, but it wouldn't make them different from the standard of how many rounds you have, giving ESPN continued access to what they currently have. Right now, ESPN has access to 4 rounds in the college football playoffs. You're looking at the first round, then you're looking at the second round with the buys, then you're looking at the third round, the semifinals, and then you're looking at the final round with the college football playoff championship there. If you were to add to 24 teams, not add 24, if you were to add teams and get to the 24 mark, you would be adding a 5th round of college football. Now, the thing that not a lot of people understand is that 5th round would not necessarily be the playoffs. It would be a play-in game situation during conference championship weekend. So instead of seeing these conference championship games where we all get up in arms and argue Alabama should be out and everything else, you would actually see games that are going to either put teams in the playoffs or not. And yes, they kind of would be in the playoffs because they're in the play-in game, but you can also see the way that March Madness has kind of marketed things with, like, they're in the tournament, but they're not really. It would be a similar thing here. And those games would actually give more meaning than the bowl games. And so that's what we're talking about with games with more meaning that players would actually continue to play in. So again, I'm not trying to convince you that the 2014 playoff is the best thing ever, but I do want to try and help people understand that it is a little bit misunderstood, that adding teams to get to 24 actually could give more TV stations, TV broadcasters is what I meant, more access to doing this. And it wouldn't just be a completely ESPN run thing, because right now there's a lot of people that think, well, ESPN, they run the entire thing. They run who gets in it. They run who don't get in it. And I'm not saying that's correct or incorrect, but I am saying that's a possibility. If you had this situation where Fox, NBC, and CBS had some games to the college football playoffs, I don't think you'd have the same thing. And I don't think you'd have ESPN having that possibility for that to happen. ESPN is going to deny it. They're always going to deny it. But at the same time, as we know, people lie. It's what happens. And if anybody thinks that ESPN doesn't have any trying to say or any say in who gets into the college football playoffs, I think they're being a little bit too hopeful there. So let me know what you think about this whole situation. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And again, if you like and subscribe, you would be entered into winning either a hat or a shirt from the Big Ten Huddle merch store, or I will buy you an item of home field for $100 or less at the end of the month. So yes, please do like, subscribe, share me your thoughts. You can just say entered. You can say who you're a fan of a team of. I don't care. As long as you comment, like, subscribe, that would do it for me. So we'll be right back after this. Ohio State has hired their new offensive coordinator, and it's an experienced young play caller who served as an NFL head coach. It's Arthur Smith of the Pittsburgh, well, formerly of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Arthur Smith has been with the Steelers for the past 2 seasons. He also served as the Atlanta Falcons head coach for 3 seasons. I believe he went 21-30. I forgot to write that record down. While he was there as a head coach, he was also the Tennessee offensive coordinator for 2019 and 2020 there as well. He worked his way up in the NFL. He started off as as a defensive assistant at Ole Miss, got his way into the Tennessee Titans as a defensive analyst. And then I believe he became an offensive line assistant coach, worked his way up from there, eventually became the offensive coordinator. And after 2 years there, became the Atlanta Falcons head coach. Did not go so well for him there as the head coach, as he got fired and then went on over to the Steelers. I love this hire for Ohio State. I know there's going to be a lot of people that say, well, get ready to learn, run, what was it, like run, pass, punt, or something like that. And while I do understand the criticisms of Arthur Smith, I also think that people need to understand that the schematic structure of, coordinators and stuff like that in the NFL is 10 times higher than what you get from most, not all, but most coordinators in college football. And so even the worst of the worst coordinators in the NFL, especially play calling coordinators in the NFL, is 10 times better than most of the coordinators in college football. And the reason why I say that is to help people understand, the same thing with what if like last year, what if Ohio State played the Browns? Well, okay, this happened, that happened. No, the Browns would kill them. Right. Last year, Ohio State was the national champions. The Browns were one of the worst teams. I think that was last year, one of the worst teams in the league. And, they would still kill them because it's the Browns. They're an NFL team. They have NFL talent all littered all over that roster. And even though Ohio State had the NFL talent on their roster, they still were not nearly good enough to be able to do that. Same thing in this situation, to where coordinators live on football and do crazy things with it when they're at the NFL level. And for them to bring somebody like that to Ohio State is a huge thing for them. Ohio State on FanDuel, they had plus 650 odds to win the title. That is tied with first with Notre Dame. And my question is, will it go up, right? Will it go up after a hire like this? Because if you're number one in national title odds tied with somebody else at plus 650, then you hire your offensive coordinator, would that possibly go up? I think it'd be interesting if it did happen. I don't know if the odds are going to move off of that, but I think it would be interesting if that happened. Here's my 5 reasons why I like the hire of Arthur Smith to Ohio State. Number 1, Arthur Smith is a young but veteran NFL coordinator who Ryan Day won't need to babysit. Now, Ryan Day wants to be the CEO of the team. If you're an Ohio State fan, you've heard that term before. When Ryan Day was truly the CEO of the team, that's when they won the national championship. Chip Kelly on staff and that whole situation, how that worked out. Jim Knowles as the defensive coordinator. Ryan Day did a fantastic job that season, and he trusted his staff that he had with him. Ohio State had, and I'm not trying to disparage his coach by saying this, but it's just true, Ohio State had its worst offensive showings of Day's career when Hartline was the offensive coordinator. Hartline was the offensive coordinator this past season, and while it wasn't bad, it still was some of the worst of Day's career at Ohio State. He was also the offensive coordinator 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, when Kyle McCord was the quarterback then, and really he wasn't calling plays then, and there were questions about if Hartline was calling plays this season very much either. The run game suffered this season, and on top of that, you also had a quarterback that was not a natural runner, and that put a damper on things as well. So it's clear that Ryan Day, if he wants to be a national championship winning head coach, he can't continue to bring guys up who are offensive coordinators for their first year. I understand why he did it for Brian Hartline. If there was anybody that was going to be able to do it, it was going to be Brian Hartline. And Brian Hartline didn't fail this season. Brian Hartline did a good job. It wasn't the best offense we've ever seen under Ryan Day, but he was also a first-time offensive coordinator, and that's what you're going to get. And Ryan Day probably had to devote some more time to working with him on that. Point number 2 is that Arthur Smith is known as a run-focused guy, which is why I think he was the choice over somebody like Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy was the other NFL guy that was kind of being talked about here, but Arthur Smith was the one that they went with. And Arthur Smith is he's a guy that comes from the Shanahan, McVay, LaFleur kind of coaching, not coaching tree, but kind of like the coaching schematics there and that whole thing. So Day is bringing in a veteran offensive coordinator who specializes in the running game. And if you know anything about Ohio State last season, you know that the running game was not its best. Day's pass offense is Shanahan based. And so you're going to find common ground between this run offense of Arthur Smith and this passing offense of Ryan Day that could merge and be something very, very interesting. For Ohio State's offense next season, you're going to expect a whole lot more of kind of an NFL style, a whole lot more of Julian Sayin under center, I think. And then I think you're going to see multiple tight end looks, not necessarily like a bunch of tight ends, but just different looks about where you see the tight end in there and how the tight ends operate. One thing that Arthur Smith did a lot of with the Steelers was he ran a lot of under center RPOs, which facilitate effective rushing without relying on your quarterback's mobility. And this addresses a huge need for Ohio State next season. And it also addresses something that Ryan Day doesn't like to do, which he doesn't like to have his quarterback run. Well, if you watch the playoffs this season, every single one of those quarterbacks ran the ball, maybe not super well, but all of them did it in situations when they needed to. And while, yes, you can't completely get rid of the run game for the quarterback, you can minimize it by going with somebody who is an under center RPO type of guy. Versus Miami, Ohio State actually had a really good rushing success rate of 68%, which is crazy good. Like above average is like 50% or better. The problem is that they got away from the rushing for a multitude of reasons, but they did get away from the rushing. And I think if you have a guy who is more run focused like Arthur Smith, I don't think you get away from the rushing as quickly. Ryan Day, as a play caller, has been known to get away from the rushing too quickly, the run game, running the ball too much, too quickly. And I think you saw that against Miami. And it was one of the reasons why Ohio State did not have the most success in that game. Bringing in a guy who does have a run focus like Arthur Smith, I think will combat that. And also when it's somebody who has the respect of Ryan Day, an NFL guy, I think that's going to combat it as well. Number 3, Arthur Smith is not some NFL reject or anything like that. He's a former NFL head coach who is being sought after by other NFL teams as well. There are reports out there that he was still being considered for the Eagles and the Titans offensive coordinator. Smith spent the last 2 seasons with the Steelers under Mike Tomlin. Before that, he was a head coach with the Falcons, and before that, he was offensive coordinator with the Titans. Get this. Go back and look at their careers. Arthur Smith, Matt Patricia, neither of them have ever been fired as a coordinator. Now, fired as a head coach, sure, they both have. But fired as a coordinator, neither of them have ever been fired as a coordinator. I guess you could talk about like the weird offensive coordinator and thing and stuff like that Matt Patricia did. But in reality, neither of them have been fired as a coordinator, which is huge and I think speaks a lot to their ability and who they are. This season, actually, the Steelers ranked 15th in the NFL and averaging 22 points per game with one of the worst groupings of offensive talent in the entire league. And I know what you're going to say. Oh, JR, everybody has talent in the NFL and everything else. Right. But you look at that team and what they had on offense, they quite simply did not have enough to really compete in the NFL at a championship level. All right. Aaron Rodgers is a fantastic talent, and he's one of the best quarterbacks that I've ever seen play the game of football. However, he's also very late in his career. He's also somebody that is slowing down quite a bit. And he's also somebody that if you watch this season, it's just evident. He's getting too old for the game, unfortunately. Still a very good quarterback, but still too old for the game. And he did not have enough weapons around him. Even the run game suffered from not enough weapons and everything else. But in Columbus, Smith will have one of the top returning offensive trios in the country with Julian Sayin, Jeremiah Smith, and Bo Jackson. And that is going to be an incredible trio between those 3 guys. And if Arthur Smith is going to go from having one of the worst trios in all of the NFL, or not one of the worst trios, one of the worst groups of offensive weapons in the NFL to having possibly the best trio of offensive weapons in college football. And that's going to be a really exciting thing. Number 4 is that he will be the sole offensive coordinator with no recruiting or positional responsibilities, and that does continue to pertain to the NFL model. Smith will have similar responsibilities to Matt Patricia, but coaching the offense only. He won't have any recruiting responsibilities or anything like that. You do see Matt Patricia going on the road and recruiting, but this will give Arthur Smith complete control over only coaching the offense. He doesn't have to mess with recruiting, and that would give him an even more opportunity to connect with these players, understand where they're coming from, what plays do you like, what plays do you don't like, and meeting in different rooms, and ultimately being the actual head coach of the offense. That's what Chip Kelly was. That was one of the things that was most valuable about Chip Kelly, and I think will be very valuable about somebody like Arthur Smith as well. I think this is a move that you're going to see more schools do, because right now Ohio State has 10 countable coaches. If you don't like, there is no limit on coaches in college football nowadays, but you do have a limit on how many of them can recruit. You still can only have 10 coaches recruiting. Right now, Ohio State has that filled, which is why some people thought, well, maybe they'll go with an internal hire, but they did not end up doing that. And I think you're going to see this happen more often. I think you're going to see more teams hire more positional coaches to do this recruiting stuff, and more teams go with coordinators that maybe don't have to do this. In fact, I've even heard some rumblings that you might get like an edge rushing or like an outside linebackers coach or something like that for Ohio State this offseason. If that does happen, then that would probably leave Matt Patricia as no longer being a recruiter on the staff. Again, I don't know if that's true or not. That's just something I've heard. If it does happen, I think you would really see Ohio State going all in on this. You know, coordinators are just NFL guys who kind of scheme up plays type of stuff and work with the team, which I would like that idea. I don't think it'd be bad. My last one, number 5, Ohio State just unlocked a ton of FedEx money to play with in the NIL portal world, because Arthur Smith's dad is the founder of FedEx, Fred Smith. All right, now RIP Fred Smith. I believe he's passed away, but does this mean that Arthur Smith can deliver? Get it? FedEx, he can deliver? Okay. All right, I get it. Bad joke. This is mostly a joke. I mean, I don't think FedEx is actually going to be doing a whole bunch of NIL, but his brother is a high position person at FedEx still. So who knows? Maybe Arthur goes to FedEx and says, "Hey, I need a left tackle," and you see something work out where all of a sudden a left tackle goes into the portal, and then he makes his way on over to Ohio State. I'm kidding, of course, but honestly, like, who knows? In the world of college football today, where, like I said, everybody tampers, it's just some teams are better at it than others. It is what it is. So I do think that Arthur Smith's story is interesting. Like, I do think when you have a dad like Fred Smith who had it all, like, he's obviously very rich, very wealthy, there could be a temptation for Arthur Smith just to get a cushy job, at FedEx from his dad or something like that. But that's not what he did. Arthur Smith, like, he chose to go the coaching route, and the coaching route kind of sucks, especially at the time when he went into it, late 2000s type of stuff. 2000, I think he started in 2007 or 2008 as the North Carolina GA was his first coaching job. But to kind of work your way up, to go to Ole Miss and then go to the Titans and be in, the doldrums of the NFL coaching staff by being an assistant there, starting on defense, working your way on over to offense, eventually becoming an offensive coordinator there. Like, to me, it does show a whole lot of grit. It does show a whole lot of toughness and workability to be able to go and do that. So believe in that or not, if you do, but I think it speaks to something about Arthur Smith, and I think this is going to be a good hire for Ohio State. You'll get the jokes of all this other stuff, but I would just remind people, you got a lot of those same jokes with Matt Patricia. And Matt Patricia just had statistically the number 1 defense in the nation this season. You can say that's because of the schedule all you want, but at the end of the day, you watch that defense and it was really impressive. I'm not saying Arthur Smith's going to have number 1 offense in the country or anything like that, but I am saying that it worked out last time when Ohio State got an NFL coordinator to come to their school. And I think it might just work out again. So thanks for watching, everybody. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you talking Big Ten football with me. Again, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff in the comment section below. In the comment section below. And if by the end of the month here, I will choose one person. From the comment section, if you like and subscribe, to win a free piece of apparel from Home Field, $100 or less, or you can get something from the Big Ten Huddle merch shop. One of my hats, the undefeated hypothetical matchups SEC hat there, or let's see, I got my other ones. My beat the SEC Big Ten hat, or just the standard trucker, the Big Ten Huddle hat. Right there. Or if you don't win, you can just go buy one for yourself. Go do that too. So appreciate you guys being here. Thank you for listening. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.